The night it happened started like any other family dinner. Polite small talk, forced smiles, and the quiet tension that always hung in the air whenever I was around. Mom had made her usual roast. Dad was halfway through his second glass of wine, and my older siblings were glued to their phones, laughing among themselves. I sat there, invisible, poking at my plate, pretending not to notice how my presence seemed to dull the mood. Then Dad cleared his throat, glass raised high. "A toast," he said, smiling, that cold, practiced smile he used whenever he was about to humiliate someone. "To our family, and to our children who've made us proud." His eyes landed on my brother, a lawyer, and my sister, a doctor. Then he looked at me. His smile faltered, and to the one who's still figuring it out. The table erupted in laughter. My sister chimed in, still trying to find out what being useful even means. "Huh?" My brother added, "Hey, at least you're consistent, consistently unemployed." Mom didn't stop them. She didn't even glance my way. She just said softly, "You're the most useless child we have. We tried everything. You just didn't turn out right." Her words hit harder than I expected. I'd been the quiet one, the dreamer, the one who didn't fit into their world of perfection and appearances. I'd spent years trying to prove I was worth something, sending job updates, inviting them to my small wins, only to get silence in return. That night, something inside me broke, but not the way they expected. I didn't cry. I didn't storm out. I looked straight at them and said calmly, "You're right. I am useless to this family, but not to the world. You'll see." Then I stood up, left the table, and closed the door behind me. It was the last time I'd sit at that dinner table as the forgotten child, because from that night on, I promised myself one thing. They'd regret ever calling me useless. The next morning, the house felt emptier than ever, but my mind was sharper than it had been in years. Their laughter from the night before echoed in my head, not as pain anymore, but as fuel. For years, I'd lived in the shadow of their achievements, always compared, always belittled. But this time, I was done playing their game. I packed my old laptop, a camera I bought with my last paycheck, and left. I didn't have much money, but I had ideas. I'd always been good with technology, video editing, storytelling, and understanding people's emotions. While my family chased status, I decided to chase connection. For weeks, I slept on a friend's couch while building my first YouTube channel. The idea was simple: real stories, raw emotions, human lessons. I called it Echoes of Us. It wasn't flashy, but it was honest. My first few videos got only a few hundred views, but I kept going, posting every night, learning from every mistake. Months passed. I got a small following, then a loyal one. Viewers began sharing their own stories, people who had been told they were worthless, who had been forgotten by their families too. They said my voice gave them comfort, that they didn't feel alone anymore. Meanwhile, my family carried on as if I never existed. My mother still sent out family newsletters bragging about my siblings' promotions. My father still gave speeches about raising successful children. Not once did they mention me. Then one evening, I got an email from a small production company. They had seen my channel and wanted to collaborate on a documentary about mental health and family pressure. They offered me $15,000 upfront, more than I'd ever made in my life. I accepted without hesitation. That project changed everything. The documentary went viral, airing on national TV. Suddenly, my name was in headlines, my story being discussed, my work being respected. I was invited to speak at universities to talk about resilience and healing. And then, out of nowhere, I got a call from Mom. Her voice was shaky. "We saw you on TV," she said softly. "Your father and I are proud." I paused for a long time. Proud. The same people who told me I was useless, now proud. I asked, Did you watch the part where I talked about how words from those you love can destroy you? She didn't answer. She just said, your brother's business isn't doing well. Maybe you could help him get into media. That was when I realized it wasn't pride. It was convenience. I'd become useful. I ended the call without a word. I didn't owe them my success, my time, or my peace. Weeks later, my father called too. You've proven your point, he said. Now it's time to come home. Home. I repeated. Home was supposed to be where I felt loved. You made sure I never had that. He went silent. Then quietly he said, you always were dramatic. That was it. The final nail. I hung up, blocked the number, and focused on the life I'd built myself. 3 years later, I stood on a stage accepting an award for digital storytelling, one of the biggest nights of my life. The lights were blinding, the applause deafening. I looked out at the crowd and saw faces full of hope, people who had once felt like me, forgotten, unloved, unworthy. I smiled and said, to everyone who was ever told they were useless, remember, the ones who doubted you will eventually need you. But by then, you won't need them. It wasn't revenge. It was freedom. The kind that only comes from surviving the people who try to break you. And thriving anyway. A year after the award ceremony, I received a message from my sister, just one line that carried more weight than any apology ever could. Mom's sick. Dad's been asking about you. For hours, I couldn't bring myself to reply. Part of me had moved on, built a new life, learned to breathe without their approval. But another part, that quiet, wounded child who'd once begged for their love, wanted to see them one last time. Not out of guilt, but closure. When I finally walked up to the old house, it felt smaller than I remembered. The garden I used to tend as a kid was overgrown. The laughter and sharp words that once filled its walls were gone, replaced by silence and the faint hum of an oxygen machine inside. Dad opened the door. He looked older, defeated. No arrogance left in his posture, just years of exhaustion carved into his face. You came, he said simply, stepping aside. I nodded and walked in. Mom was in her room, lying under a thin blanket. Her hair was gray now, her face pale. When she saw me, her lips trembled. You're here, she whispered, as if afraid I might disappear if she blinked. I sat by her side. For a while we said nothing. The room was heavy with everything we'd never said, every cruel word, every moment of silence that should have been love. Finally, she spoke. I told myself I was making you strong, she said weakly, but I was just scared you'd fail, like I once did. And I took that fear out on you. I swallowed hard. You didn't make me strong, I said quietly. You just made me learn strength without you. Her eyes glistened. And you did, she said, voice trembling. You became everything I wanted for you, just not in the way I imagined. I'm sorry, truly. It wasn't a cinematic moment of forgiveness. There was no dramatic hug, no instant healing. But for the first time, I saw her not as the mother who hurt me, but as a flawed human being who had been hurt herself. That night, I sat outside the house, watching the sky fade into dawn. For years, I dreamed of hearing the words, "We're proud of you." Now, I realized I didn't need them anymore. I'd already given myself that validation, and it meant more than anything they could ever say. When Mom passed away months later, I didn't cry from pain, but from peace, because I knew that the boy who once felt invisible had finally been seen, not by them, but by himself. And that was enough.